Hello? Is anybody out there? Hello? My name is Tom, and this is the channel of 3 Basket Living. Welcome back. I did a video recently showing how I go about making my own homemade soil blocks without having to be so dependent and reliant upon all these other materials that you have to purchase in a box store to utilize the 2-inch soil blocker for seed starting. During that video, I had utilized what I referred to as some of my own homemade liquid fertilizer. And there's been a couple folks that were asking me how I go about doing that. Well, it's nothing original to me, but I'm going to share that today. But I want to start off on this second day of trying to share this with you because weather hasn't been cooperating. But I want to start off by saying this. It is not enough to just go organic. It's not enough. I am an advocate, I am a promoter, and I am still a student of the natural farming techniques in the community. And I have been so for about 6 years now. And I'm still a student, so that does not make me an expert. But I'm going to share with you how I go about making this liquid fertilizer. In the JADAM, J-A-D-A-M farming techniques by Mr. Yang-Sang Cho, they would refer to this as JLF, JADAM liquid fertilizer. He is the son of Mr. Cho, who is probably the big promoter of the old Korean natural farming techniques. There are differences, and Mr. Cho has just kind of took it a little step further in making it lower cost and removing a little bit more dependency on outside elements that everybody can't just have on hand and produce themselves, such as molasses and brown sugar. He also suggests that by eliminating the need or use for brown sugar and molasses, anything with the sugars in it, that you decrease the potential for any type of disease setting in. I don't know, but I tend to follow the JADAM natural farming low-cost techniques in the things that I'm trying to do and apply out here. But I should note also that I still listen and follow with people like Joe Salatin, Jeff Lawton, Chris Trump, Drake out there in Hawaii, Miss Elaine, all those people that are advocates of doing more natural organic farming and doing so at a much lower cost to the individual homeowner, to the consumer, and to the farmer, big and small. That's what JADAM pretty much focuses on. Doing everything naturally, but at a very low cost with the very things that the great provider has already provided for you directly in the form of nature. Yah. You can't get any better than Yah's design in the world, in the universe. If you're like me and you take the opportunity when you can, especially when you hear people complaining about their health issues, that complain about their finances, and you try to suggest things like eating healthier, non-GMO, organic food, or to the grower, gardener, or farmer, suggesting to them to go into a more natural way or organic way of doing his farming or growing, it never fails almost every single time. The single biggest complaint or obstacle that people are faced with is the cost. It hurts them financially. It hurts their pocketbook. Some people just can't afford to go organic. If you go into a grocery store or something like that and you come across a 4-pack of tomatoes on the vine, maybe you pay something like $3 for that. But they want to go organic. So they go down the aisle and they find another pack of 4 tomatoes still on the vine that is labeled naturally grown or certified organic. Now they're paying $4 or $5 for the same 4 tomatoes. You apply that throughout the grocery store. You can see easily, we all know that you can very quickly take a $200 grocery bill and go organic and turn it into, say, a $400 grocery bill. And it's no different for the gardener and the grower. Ask any big agricultural farmer, about the cost of fertilization and the inputs into his field. For example, if he wanted to go organic and he wanted to buy, say, a 5-gallon jug, or let's just take a gallon jug, biodiverse, certified organic liquid fertilizer concentrate, he's looking at paying probably somewhere along the lines of $30, even upwards to $120 for that 1 gallon of concentrate liquid fertilizer. That's why it hurts people. So something has to give. And that's what we're doing today, one of these practices. And I'm going to demonstrate and show how easy, how low cost, and effective this can be. Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, now we are going to go into the steps to making what they refer to as JLF, JADAM liquid fertilizer, your homemade liquid fertilizer, so that we can eliminate the impact on our pocketbooks if we want to make the choice to grow and farm organically and naturally. And we're going to see how much this costs us. I grow Bach or Bocking 14, comfrey. I prefer that variety because I don't have to worry about it going to seed and becoming invasive. So that's what I'm going to choose to use today. You can use your hay, straw, alfalfa, cover crops, clover, garden waste, your food waste. You can use fish remains, manures, urine, grass clippings, so long as you don't have the pesticides and the glyphosate sprayed all over that. Your lawn clippings will become the very fertilizer that you need more than anything on your lawn, if you just take the lawn clippings and do what we're going to do today. So what I did yesterday morning, I went down and I started collecting some of my comfrey. Flowers and all. I wanted all, the stems, the leaves, and the flowers. I ended up coming back up here on top of the hill and bringing it back to the container. I ended up with 5 comfrey plants. I could probably go with another 1 or 2, but it turns out that it's going to be just fine. So I bring it up to the container, and what I like to do, I like to cut my stuff up a little bit. Chop it up for a couple reasons. One is that it lays in the container better. It fits in there better, and I can get more in there. The other reason, especially when I'm pulling things out of the garden at the end of the season, like tomato plants, squash, melon, cucumber, all those things that have that hardy, woody vine and stalks, stuff like that, I found it best to chop that up, not in tiny pieces, but in 6, 8, 10, 12-inch lengths, depending on your container, that it will lay in there better, but also because it's so hardy, it will decompose quicker as the microbes are able to enter on the cut ends on there, and it just breaks down faster. So I chop it up here. I end up here with about 3/4 of the way full on this 32-gallon trash can. Step number 1 is complete. The cost at this point right now is $0. Step number 2 is we need water. I am utilizing well water. Utilize rainwater. Do not utilize the chemically treated municipal water that's filled with chlorine, fluoride, monochlorine, because you're probably going to end up killing the whole process. So we're going to fill this up with water. Now, if my comfrey wasn't floating, what I'd be looking for, and what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to have my water line approximately, in this case, 2 to 3 inches above the plant material that I'm putting in here. But it's floating, and I'm obviously going to have enough water here. It won't be floating for very long. Step number 2 is complete. The cost that we have in this right now is, again, $0. Wait, that might not be true for me. I might have a nickel or a dime in this because I utilized electricity to run my well pump to pump that water out of the ground and into the container. But for all intents and purposes, $0 at this point. Now, step number 3 is very important. We need microbes. Not just any microbes. What we want is we want indigenous microbes. Microbes that are already adaptive to our farm, to our geographical area, or at least in our same grow zone. So we're going to get these microbes, and we want diverse group of microbes. And the best way that I know how to do that, and I'm taking the advice and following the lead of others out there long before me, is we do that in the form of leaf mold. So we go out in the woods, go in your state park, drive down a dirt road and just go walk out in the woods a little bit, and you want to look for old dead wood, piles of leaves that hadn't been disturbed, and you start pulling that stuff back. And when you start seeing that stringy white stuff they call mycelium, and that rich, dark, moist stuff along with it, that's what we call leaf mold. And we want to get a handful or two of that. It would be beneficial if we can get that stuff in a couple, maybe 2 or 3 different locations. And all that's going to do is that is going to increase the probability of having even more diverse group of microbes. Diversity of the microbes is key and vital in this JADAM, natural organic farming methods. So we get that leaf mold, we bring it back to our container, and we sprinkle it on top. Just a handful or 2 is all you need. Sprinkle it on top, and then I give it a little poke with my stick here, wet it down, and then I put the lid on, my securable lid. Step number 3 is complete and done. Cost at this point, $0. All right, so now let me give you some fair warning here, okay? I don't want you to get scared, but I want you to be aware of this, because this is a natural process. When you make this liquid fertilizer, you do not want to set this outside your back door so you can conveniently scrape off your dinner plates if you're utilizing food scraps. You don't want to put it in your basement. You don't want to put it in the shop, the garage, and maybe not even the greenhouse. You decide. But I want to tell you, this stuff, when it starts going, it stinks. I can't stress that enough. It stinks. It's equivalent to throwing a dead possum on your bed and just let it naturally decay. But don't worry about that. That's a good thing. That means the bacteria, all those bacteria that you collected in that leaf mold, they're going to work. And what they do is they break things down and they consume. And when they do, they emit gases and they excrete out of their bodies the very things, the nutrients, ready for those roots of those plants to uptake. It's a natural process and it's a good thing. So now at this point we wait. How long do we wait? Really not that long, and it does depend when you start it and what you're placing in there. I'm anticipating this can start to be utilized in about 2 to 3 weeks time with this comfrey. If I was to stuff this container full of purslane in the heat of the summer, because it's a soft tissue plant, it can completely break down in about 7 to 10 days. But as a general rule, what the folks in the natural farming community are going to tell you, and Mr. Cho, Young-Sung Cho, is going to tell you in his book, is that when you see this water that we placed in here, this cold well water, so I need a day or 2 of sun for this water to warm up, because as the water warms up, the temperature, it becomes more active. But right now we have this clear water. So when we see that water start to caramelize in color, looking like a tea and coffee, and it's going to continue to change, at that point you can start utilizing this as a liquid fertilizer. But this brings me to a good point to bring this up, that other people in the natural farming community, and Mr. Young-Sung Cho states in his book, he says this stuff is kind of like soy sauce. And what he says in there is that the farther it goes, or the longer it sits, the more it ages, the better it becomes. I'm not quite sure exactly what he means when he says it becomes better. And I didn't know that about soy sauce. I understood that about whiskey, wine, and women, but I didn't know that about soy sauce. So I bring that up because I was a little concerned about the longer time frame that it sits out and ages. Does he mean it becomes stronger? And when I say stronger, I'm talking about in terms of the heat or the nitrogen concentration within the liquid fertilizer, because I had a little experiment by accident just this last year. Let me explain. On this older batch that I have and this other can sitting next to it, this batch right now is probably a little over a year and a half. At the time when I started using it, it was only about 3 or 4 months of age, and I started utilizing it. Well, I wanted to dispense it in out of a watering can up by the cabin. But anyhow, I typically like to mix it up in 5-gallon buckets. So I'll grab a 5-gallon bucket, fill it up with water. Well, that's 80 cups, 5 gallons. So I took 1 cup of my filtered liquid fertilizer, my JLF, and put it in the 5-gallon bucket. Now I got an 80-to-1 ratio. I put it in, give it a quick stir, put it in a watering can, and we were coming up here to the cabin to do some fertilization into that soil that we're developing up there. And what happened is, by accident, not paying attention, that watering can passed over this plant here in this curvature fashion here, and what you see here is this little dark area. Well, this is after a year of growth coming back. That fertilizer hit that foliage. It did not kill the plant, but within 2 days that foliage was as yellow as a fresh dandelion flower. I mean, and then 3rd day it was pretty much gone. 3rd and 4th day it burned it up. So that was an 80-to-1 ratio. The reason I bring that up is because that's what concerned me about when he says the longer it goes, the better it becomes. I think what he might be meaning is that the nutrients and maybe the balance of all those minerals are coming to stabilization or something. I'm not really sure what exactly how to define what he meant as in better. This year I took the same batch of fertilizer, which is now a year and a half old, at least aging. Maybe this could be utilized in the right manner as some sort of organic and natural weed control around the buildings, along fence lines. Well, I have a buddy down the road who has a big greenhouse. Well, it's kind of gotten out of hand and all the weeds and grasses are coming up through the floor. So I asked him to let me experiment with my fertilizer here, and I mix it at about a 1-to-10 ratio, I believe is what it was. It might have been 1-to-20, but I did 1-to-10, and I went to town on all that stuff. I waited 2 days later, nothing. 4 days later, nothing. 6 days later, all those grasses and weeds seemed like they just got this super vigor in them. They all greened up even darker and just took off. I was like, holy crap, that didn't work. So I'm still learning and I'm still experimenting, and maybe some of the permies and natural growers out there can help me out with that. So now it's getting time and we can utilize our liquid fertilizer. So how do we go about utilizing this stuff? Well, in Mr. Cho's book, he gives all kinds of ratios in there. It could be a 30-to-1, 100-to-1, 500-to-1, 1,000-to-1 ratio. I do want to reiterate here, though, that sometimes when you see the high ratios like 300-to-1, 500, or 1,000-to-1 ratio, it doesn't necessarily mean because the fertilizer is that strong and potent. Sometimes it's because we're utilizing the water as a carrier, just like you would in essential oils. In this 32-gallon container here, let's say I got 30 gallons of natural, organic, biodiverse liquid fertilizer and concentrate. 30 gallons. And if they want to sell that stuff to you, the very same kind of stuff, for let's just say $50 a gallon, you just produce in under 30 minutes at zero cost to you the equivalence of $1,500 of that stuff. That's how these people are banking all that money into their pockets. And you suffer, and you're struggling with that choice to go organic and natural or take the cheaper, lower cost route. Just something to think about. But now we need to get it out of this container. I recommend that whatever container you put it in, that it's secured. Because if this thing gets knocked over, or you transport it in your vehicle, your UTV, or your tractor, and that lid comes off and this stuff spills, you are going to regret it. It'd be like a dead squirrel or rat crawling up behind the dash of your car that just sits there and rots and decays and you can't get it out. There's several methods, and you'll come up with your own ideas and ways of going about this to get it out of your container, whether it's a 5-gallon bucket or it's a trash can. Typically what I'll do, no matter what, is I filter it. I don't buy any special filters. I use a piece of old white t-shirts. It could be a piece of pillowcase, bedding, towel, whatever you want to utilize. I just choose to that, especially with things that have a 300 to 400 thread count or something like that. It filters just fine, because we want to dispense it out of things, watering cans like this with the little sprinkle heads, and we don't want that to clog up. And other things like this. You got your 1-gallon sprayers right here, 15-gallon, 300-gallon sprayers that go on the back of farm equipment out in those big fields, and you don't want to clog this stuff up. But my favorite at my size of operation is utilizing these things. These are dial-in sprays. I take the contents that they give you in these things here and I chuck them in the trash. But I do like these dial-in sprays. Well, if you see on this one here, it has 3 settings, which I really like, by the way, because I got more of a spray here, but I don't want to clog that up, so that's why we filter it. I really like the fact that it shoots out a straight stream, so if I don't want to apply this fertilizer, any inputs directly on my foliage, I use that stream and I can go right at the base of the plants in the soil around them. These are my favorite at this scale. Okay, I want to give you one final warning, and this is to reiterate to you not to underestimate your homemade natural liquid fertilizer, because you made it yourself and did it under 30 minutes for 0 to no cost at all. And it wasn't developed in some highly advanced technical laboratory from people wearing white coats that it might not be as good or as effective or as strong. You will be sadly mistaken, because you could very easily ruin your whole crop. This is better, it can be stronger, it's going to be more balanced. But the beauty of it is this is adapted already to your growing environment. Not from another state, not from another country, right there on your own property. And that is a good thing. So don't underestimate it, respect it, believe in it. You'll find out just how good and how well it is. If you find anything beneficial and edifying in this information, you don't have to share this video. Just share the knowledge, share the information, pass along to other folks in your community, in your families, and abroad. Have a nice day. May all your branches become full of fruit, and I hope I see you next time. Whoa! Right on.